ever been in a small town in the Midwest on Saturday night, you have a pretty good idea of what mine looks like. The sidewalks won't hold everybody. It's a friendly crowd. A man will say hello to another man and ask his wife, who was that fellow I just spoke to? Children get sleepy while the grown-ups stand around and talk, window shop, or see a Western in us. Medicine in this town for 25 years. Saturday night's always my busiest time. The sick get restless and lonely when everybody else is stirring. They want to be sure they're coming along fine. Yeah, the whole town likes to know it's coming fine. We all want a peaceful place to live and raise our families. And we have it. But we had to work for it. Because this wasn't a peaceful town a year ago. We had trouble. It flared up on a Saturday night. High school boys fought a pitched battle on a back street. This was the fever from an infection called prejudice. Kids from the south end of town fought their bitter enemies from the north side. When the fight was over, Ed Crandall's boy, Frank, lay quiet on the street. Somebody telephoned Ed. He got there as fast as he could. I knew the boy. Signed his birth certificate. 17 years ago, brought him through measles and took his tonsils out. The boys who'd fought against each other waited all night for Frank. But there wasn't anything more I could do for him. He died before we could operate. Ed didn't want me to drive him home. He said he'd walk. I understood. We've known each other a long time, and I knew that Ed was thinking hard under his grief. By now, of course, the whole town knew what was on his mind that night. Ed couldn't believe that his son had enemies. Frank was a friendly, good-natured boy. Why would he fight those kids from the other side of town? The other side of town. That was it. Ed Crandall's boy died. Why? Because there was an invisible fence standing between two neighborhoods. Ed was a lonely man, dazed and shocked by the real reason behind his loss. He began to think of some other fences he had seen in this town. That day in the candy kitchen where the high school kids hang out, a fence was there, separating one race from another. It didn't seem too important at the time. Just an incident. Or was it a symptom of an evil growth on the character of our kids? Now Ed began to understand the meaning of other incidents he had seen. There was the day he looked in on football practice. The coach read off the names of the boys who'd made the varsity team. Frank Crandall, fullback. Bill O'Connor, right tackle. And Jerry Kaplan, quarterback. Most of the losers took it gracefully, but Johnny Stetson didn't. He'd worked hard for the position Jerry earned. But when he didn't get it, his prejudices blinded his sportsmanship. Another fence. This one between two religions. Ed Crandall's editor of our daily newspaper. He thinks square, and he's not afraid of facts when he sees them. The night his son died, the facts came home with a heart-crushing jolt. Ed laid them bare with the tools at his command. He wrote a fence-busting editorial for the front page. That's how the whole town learned what was on his mind. Like everybody else, I clipped the editorial. Dear Mayor, it began. This won't be a very formal letter. I don't feel very formal. I just lost my son because there are fences in this town. Fences between neighborhoods, races, religions. Together, we've got to tear these fences down. Somehow, we've got to get our kids working together as Americans, right now. The next morning, Ed's editorial was on the desk of Betty Ainsworth. Betty's the secretary of the Community Welfare Council's Recreation Division. It reminded her of a youth program she knew about. Maybe that was the answer to Ed's editorial. She made the first move by calling a meeting of the Recreation Division to explain the idea. The idea of a youth council composed of teenage delegates from all the youth-serving organizations. Let this youth council be directed by the kids themselves, she said, and let a few adults advise them when advice is needed. Phil Greenberg, a businessman interested in kids, John Latham, city commissioner of parks, liked the idea. Mrs. Simmons of the Campfire Girls and Fred Andrews of the Board of Education agreed that it was worth a try. Mrs. Duncan wasn't so sure. Her point was that adults should take complete charge, otherwise the kids would get out of control. Harry Young dismissed the idea as impossible entirely. Betty was persistent because she knew what kids can do. John argued that kids must learn to think for themselves and make their own mistakes. That checked with Phil. He thought the youth agency, city and voluntary alike, would welcome a chance to see their groups working together. At that point, Mrs. Duncan changed her mind. Finally, the committee decided to accept the idea Betty presented to give the youth council a try in our town. It was a real event, that first meeting of delegates. The kids came from the well-to-do part of town, the not-so-well-to-do sections, and from a section some people call the swamp. A lot of fences between neighborhoods were kicked full of holes that day. The kids were delegates from the YMCA, the YWCA, the Jewish Community Center, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Junior Red Cross, 4-H clubs, youth hostels, future homemakers, and campfire girls. The high schools, church clubs, and settlements sent delegates, and that accounted for every youth organization in town. The kids got right down to business. Election of officers went smoothly, but framing a constitution wasn't so easy. Every paragraph that was suggested touched off debate, but they argued it through to the finish, feeling their way along. Advisor Fred Andrews could hardly keep quiet in that first meeting. He did quite a lot of listening. When the chairman finally hit a snag and asked for help, Fred felt pretty important. After the meeting, the newly elected officers posed for Ed Crandall's news photographer on the steps of the City Hall. Pepper Monroe was the first youth council president. Jerry Kaplan was vice president. Kathy Clark, secretary. Amy Trent, another vice president, and Warren Westover, treasurer. I should say Stuffy Westover. That's what the kids call him. He's my youngest boy. Well, a few weeks later, the council called a final meeting on the Constitution. Meanwhile, the delegates reported back to their separate organizations, and when they convened again, they ratified their Constitution. My son, who seems to get most of his bright ideas when I'm not present, suggested a big get-together of all the kids in town to have fun and learn what the Youth Council was all about. Another delegate proposed that the shindig be held in the YWCA, the biggest hall in town. Nobody opposed that. Some more fences were going down. The big get-together was an unexpected hit with everybody. So successful, in fact, that it embarrassed the council officers. They had to turn some of the guests away at the door. The committee got together in a huddle. Here was the biggest place in town, but it just wasn't big enough. The kids really wanted to get together. It was clear that none of their organization had facilities large enough to take care of the crowd. Why not get a place of their own, with everyone chipping in? Their enthusiasm took a nosedive when they learned that the housing shortage was real and applied to everybody. Every member of the council went out hunting real estate. But results were discouraging until Jerry and Amy found a warehouse that was owned by the town. The building was filled with dusty old equipment, but the kids were sure they could fix it up. My boy Warren came up with another one of his big ideas, to go direct to the town council and ask for that warehouse. Well, Pepper Monroe did the talking, and I understand he asked the town fathers if there were any reasons why the youth council shouldn't get the warehouse. There were. What about remodeling and upkeep? Pepper didn't exactly know. What about fire regulations? Who's going to administer the building? Pepper fumbled for the answers, but he wasn't prepared. That warehouse is for equipment, not for jitterbugs. That stung. This was one of the times when Paul Bauer wished somebody else were mayor. He told the kids to get more facts. They walked out of there, 3 spanked kids, with their heads full of problems like fire laws, building maintenance, administration, and taxes. Spanked but not licked. They wished they'd talked to their advisors first. It still wasn't too late. They called an emergency wiener roast meeting. The advisors got royal treatment. As usual, Stuffy wasn't hungry. That evening, he told me the advisors knew exactly how to handle the warehouse problem. A complete campaign was mapped out, not only to get facts, but support from the townspeople. First, the Youth Council organized a speakers bureau to spread their ideas to the women's clubs, unions, PTA, vets, everybody. Pepper was booked right away for a speech at a men's luncheon club. Next, Jerry went to the municipal engineering department to get facts about remodeling the warehouse, repairing it, and maintaining it. Then the question of money came up. The town's welfare council recommended the project to the Recreation Commission. The commission provided funds for remodeling and upkeep. Then the community chest offered a temporary director. While this was going on, all the kids went to the people for support. They rang doorbells all over town. They made a lot of new friends. People of all nationalities and races, of all religions and different points of view. Encouragement and support came from ministers of all denominations in town. From the local parish priest, and from the rabbis. The whole town warmed up to those kids, and the kids warmed up to the town. Their enthusiasm bubbled up in a weekly column they wrote for Ed Crandall's newspaper. A column with humor, surefire news value, and for readers of all ages. The campaign brought results. Mayor Bowers was bombarded with letters asking why the kids couldn't have the old warehouse. Paul told me that everyone felt that kids were more important than idle equipment. Then the Youth Council, with the full backing of their organizations, sent the mayor a formal and carefully thought-out petition. In the end, the people and the facts had their way. The teenagers and the adults agreed that there was a real need for a large center where members of all youth organizations could get together. Betty tells me this isn't necessary in many towns, and most youth councils don't have to undertake a building project. Right off the reel, the kids planned a gala opening of their new place. That week, there was a mysterious shortage of paintbrushes and stepladders all over town. The housewives had no dust claws, and the hardware store did a land office business. The kids hammered and painted for days. The tensions and hostile feelings that used to divide them melted away as they worked together. When they gave their headquarters to adult groups 4 nights a week, I knew they were recognizing other people's needs, too. I heard in a roundabout way that my son discovered a hidden talent in himself. I think the less said about that, the better. As I see it, the Youth Council has helped to make fine citizens of our kids. They've taken an interest and pride in our town that has strengthened the whole community. It's always been a neat-looking town, but the kids decided it should look a little neater. That's how the big cleanup campaign was started. Thanks to the kids, we're a town with not only a clean face, but an understanding and a kind heart. The Youth Council helped organize welcome stranger clubs in the schools. And now, when a teenager comes to town, he's welcomed, shown around, and accepted as one of the gang. And then, just about the time everybody was wondering what the kids would do next, they came up with a gesture of gratitude and a contribution to our common future. To thank the town for its cooperation, the kids went out on the edge of town to plant trees where trees were needed. Charlie Hanson supervised the job. He's been a forest ranger for 45 years, and the gang was his to command. Fred Andrews saw to it that there was music to work by. He arranged for the Board of Education's loudspeaker system. There they were. Charlie Brown, Mary Gallucci, Jack Rosenbaum, Mike O'Hara, Hank Plosky. Kids from all parts of town, working together, having fun together. The spirit was contagious. The grown-ups couldn't stay away. Harry Young, the fellow who said it wouldn't work, turned a hand to make it work. The doings of these youngsters and their youth council have been a tonic for this town. The kind of tonic that democracy needs. From north and south, east and west, from all parts of town, people were getting together. What are differences when there's work to be done? What's the difference if arms are black or white? If they belong to Catholics, Protestants, or Jews? Just so long as they're steady and willing to work together and not against one another. It's been a year since Ed's boy was killed. It's been a year since the fight on the football field. But Johnny Stetson and Jerry Kaplan, now partners in all youth council projects, planted a tree together. A tree's being planted here, too. A young tree with tender roots and twigs. It seems to me that our way of life is like this tree. We've got to tend it in mutual friendship and trust. It can only grow strong when you and I care for it together. Its roots thrusting deep into the land we love. Its branches reaching upward into the fresh, clean air of freedom.
Guy behind the wheel of that Boulder Street Lightning? That's me, Bullet Bill Bowers. My folks and I just moved to this new city, and it sure seemed to me like we'd picked out a town full of sleepwalkers. That included the fellas and girls my own age, too. I never saw such a collection of sleepy Joes, and they drove like rich old ladies in old-time electric heaps. And let's educate the high school on the subject of hot rods. How to take a jalopy and really make it move. Why, in the burg I came from, I had the juiciest bug of any rodder in the goose grease. That was our street racing club. And I had the biggest collection of traffic citations, too. All us greasers drove the cops crazy. And I could have started a private mental sanitarium for those I'd worked over. Perry and his sister Janet, yes. Walt was president of the Knights, the City Auto Sport Club. His sister was secretary. I guess my roadster impressed him. Yeah, I really had a job putting some life into this town. Why these jokers even walk slow? I went into my act at lunchtime, trying to bring the word to a bunch of prime squares. But believe me, that was the coldest audience anybody ever played to. I got nothing. Just nothing. I didn't get it at all. Were these guys abnormal or something? Or had I joined up with a bunch of zombies? It was gonna be tough, but I'd have to bear it. I was stuck with it. This city was a slow burn. It was kind of lonesome that first day, and after school. But I knew a way to get him to notice me. It had always worked before where I came from. Yeah, they knew I was around now, all right. You should have seen them scatter. I got a lot of attention. Some of it not quite what I had in mind. Officer Jim Daniels came to school to give his regular safety talk. He took off after me. He told me I was driving like a wild man. I took that as a compliment. And then he asked if I was a member of the night. So I said no, I was a goose greaser and wanted to show him my card. But all he wanted to see was my driver's license. So I was getting my first ticket in this city. Didn't impress me much. Like I say, I held a goose greaser record. But it was a different kind of a ticket. Well, I had to go to court, all right. But that wasn't new. But this court was held right in the school. And the judge and jury and the whole court were girls and fellas like myself. How about that? I didn't dig it at all. Officer Daniels was there. He was the police department advisor. The judge really socked it to me. No, I didn't have to go to jail or pay another fine. I was sentenced to a special traffic school for unsafe and reckless drivers. I'd heard about these school courts all over the country, how they'd help cut down teenage accidents, but I'd never dreamed I'd end up in one. I had to find out from somebody just what was the matter with this town. Why were they so far behind the times? I guess Officer Daniels had figured out what I was thinking. He suggested that Walt and Janet Perry explain a few things about their city and hot rodding the night's way. They gave it to me, both barrels. They weren't behind the times, I was. How about that? Me behind the times. So, I began learning about real hot rodding. The kind that develops after World War II. That's when thousands of high school and college kids and servicemen were bitten by the speed bug. They began cutting down and souping up stock cars and racing them in the public streets. It didn't take long to give drivers under 25 a bad name. Why? Maybe because teenage accidents were killing or maiming somebody once every 2 minutes, causing more damage than all fires and twice as many casualties as we had in the whole Korean War. The police cracked down, too, and collected driver's licenses wholesale. This scene was played up in a national picture magazine. But like Walt explained, figures don't mean much, just reading them. You're a lot more impressed by what happens to you personally. Tom Hanks was Walt's best friend, and his hero, actually. Tom had been in the Air Force as a fighter pilot. Now he was going to college. Tom had built up just about the slickest cut-down custom conversion in existence. You see, Tom had a big advantage. His father, George Hanks, had a big auto repair business, and besides that, he manufactured and sold speed parts. Mr. Hanks had to admit that his son had the hottest motor in town. But Tom shouldn't have spent all his time on the motor. There are other parts to a car, too. Like those little gimmicks in the wheels, the brakes. Tom was breezing down the road, and he was catching up to the 1105, a pretty fast freight. Then he thought of a good test for his engine. If he could beat the fast freight to the crossing, he'd know his engine was perfect. Then the engine sputtered, missed, slowed down just a little. Tom wouldn't beat the train. He'd have to use his brakes. But he didn't have any, and it was too late to turn off. It was easy to find that leak in the brake line, but Tom had spent all his time on the motor. A whole lot more impressive than figures. After the accident, Mr. Hanks told Officer Jim Daniels he wanted to do something, anything, to keep other boys from getting killed the way his son was. Well, Officer Daniels was ready. He'd been reading about a new kind of hot rod club with stiff, safe driving tests and which only admitted members who hadn't had a ticket for 6 months. They raced their cars, but only on special safe drag strips after complete safety inspections. So that was how the Knights Hot Rod Club was organized. Mr. Hanks was its sponsor, and Jim Daniels agreed to be police department advisor. Mr. Hanks turned over a garage to the club and gave them enough tools and equipment for a start. Every hot rodder in town wanted to join, but the safe driving test and no ticket requirement kept out quite a few at the start. Then, while they were waiting for a drag strip, the Knights began getting their cars in shape to qualify. And to many proud owners' surprise, a lot of the cars failed the safety inspection. Those that failed were disqualified for racing, so the owners worked them over night and day until they did pass. The inspection teams were getting good, so Officer Daniels decided to play a joke on them, see just how good they were. He brought over a prowl car that was ready for overhaul. The mechanic had found 5 things wrong. Now Jim wondered whether the Knights could find them. All the inspection teams joined in, teaming up on Jim's car. And they found the faults all right. And then more faults. And more faults. And more faults. A dozen more than the contract mechanic had located. When Jim got that report, he realized he'd been driving a death trap. He was lucky to have gotten to the garage alive. Yeah, the Knights had made a believer out of Jim. Meantime, Mr. Hanks was collaring all his business friends and getting them to help sponsor a drag strip and safety program. He was a real salesman. Almost before they knew it, they were signed up. Knights sponsors. Mr. Hanks and Jim Daniels went looking for a site to develop a good, safe drag strip. They found an old airfield that looked like it would fill the bill. It didn't take long to get the strip ready, and when the Knights staged their grand opening and their first-time trials and drag races, they were really on their way. The club began to impress people, the whole city, in fact. The Knights were proud of their club and were out to build a new reputation for hot rodders, for courtesy and safe driving. More and more motorists in distress received club courtesy cards. They led a successful campaign for driver education and auto shop training in high school, and right away, this began paying off, just as it has everywhere. In a survey in one state, 800 untrained drivers had 5 times as many accidents as 800 who had received training in school. At the same time, the untrained drivers got 7 times as many traffic tickets. Teenage drivers who are trained in school courses have a lot fewer accidents and get a whole lot less tickets than adult drivers. The driving teachers say that the students really go for it. Driving class is one they never miss. And why would they? Every now and then there are guest speakers, like the famous Ralph De Palma, who's considered the greatest racing driver in the past 50 years. He always tells the girls and fellas that nobody appreciates and respects careful driving more than a professional racer. Well, sure, all that safety stuff was fine, I told him. Sounded good. But speed was my meat. A good fast mill and a tire-burning takeoff. The nights go for speed too, Walt said. And then he asked if I'd like to bring my job out to the drag strip Sunday and try it out against some of their wagons. This was what I'd been waiting for. Walt had himself a deal. But I never got near the strip. They wouldn't let me. They checked my car over and said it wasn't safe. It took me a month working after school and on weekends just to get ready to pass the safety test. So I was finally going to get my chance. While we were waiting for them to qualify my car, Walt showed me around, explaining how a properly run drag strip operates. But the main one is the ratio of weight to piston displacement. This determines the basic engine class. After a car is weighed and classified, it gets a complete safety inspection. I knew from experience how tough this is. Those inspectors don't miss a thing. That's why drag strips have run for years without a serious accident. When it's been classified and inspected for safety, a car is ready to run. It gets an official number. But drivers have to be in good standing, too. If they're not of age, their parents have to okay them. Some of them show up a little too early. While the other cars are getting oil changes, he just gets changes, period. One of the cars, named the Bean Bandit, held a strip record from a standing start to 142 miles an hour in a quarter of a mile. You'd be surprised at the number of girls who enter these drags. Not just driving, either. They know what's under the hood because they put it there themselves. Yeah, the drag strip was like a circus or a miniature Indianapolis. Hundreds of people were there from town to watch. A real big professional deal. Believe it or not, from a standing start, some of these draggers would beat a jet plane down that quarter-mile stretch. There were just about as many ideas in rebuilt bodies and chassis as there were in high-efficiency motors. It may be a man's world, but you'd never know it on that drag strip. The girls didn't ask any special deal either. They went right out and ran against the men. Did fine, too. They won their share of places. George Hanks and Jim Daniels had a right to be proud. And they were. The nights in their drag strip were things the whole city could take pride in. No wonder they came out by the hundreds or even thousands to watch every drag meet. Then Walt pointed out a man at the refreshment counter. His name was Philip, a top designing engineer from Detroit. Did you know that a whole lot of the engine ideas in new cars were first tested and proved on drag strips and dry lakes? Things like dual exhaust, dual carburetors, and high compression heads. Phillips was there to watch for applications his company could use. You know, by the time they called my number, I'd become so interested I almost forgot what I was there for. This was my chance to show him. I didn't have any doubt about breaking the record. The only question I had was, by how much? Either that clock was broken or somebody was being funny, I thought. They had me clocked at a little over 70, just half the speed of the top car. I complained to Walt just who the comic was. Walt said nobody, the time was right. But if I wanted to try a drag race, I sure did. Now I could really show him. Right on the drag strip with no phony clocks. Out of my way, starter. Yeah, I showed him all right. I had the coldest hot rod on the strip. I was left so far back I could have been driving Jack Benny's Maxwell. Obviously, I had a lot to learn from these squares. Well, there was still the reliability run. You'd think by now I'd have had better sense than to go through with it. But I didn't. And I learned another lesson. I couldn't even finish. My radiator boiled over and I ran out of gas. And I was going to teach them about hot rods. When that 1925 Star went by me, that did it. Right then, I made up my mind. If it was the last thing I ever did, I had to be one of the Knights. So I got the list of membership requirements from Walt and his sister. She was the club secretary. And guess the first thing I had to do? I had to learn to drive. Imagine that, after all the miles I'd driven. But after a couple of sessions in the dual-control car, I found out there was a whole lot more to good, safe driving than knowing how to turn the wheel or which pedal is the gas. Actually, there was more I didn't know about driving than I did know. But that was just the first requirement. Next thing on the list was to go 6 months without a citation, or even a warning. That was really tough at first, but I made it. Believe me, I was never so glad of anything in my life as I was to get hold of that little Knight's membership card. But I knew one thing. I was a whole lot better and a safer driver than I was before I started working for it. Janet asked me to come outside. She said the Knights were holding a clinic and wanted me to join them. And that's when I found out how little I actually did know about souping up an engine. The Knights were holding a clinic, all right, on my car. I thought I'd revved up my motor pretty well. But now I learned about porting and relieving the block, cylinder bore, racing flywheels, custom camshafts, exhaust headers, dual exhaust, tolerances, new ignition, high compression heads, hemispherical combustion chambers, dual carbs, dual point distributors, dual intake. Well, I needed a mechanic's dictionary to even follow what they were talking about. All those parts and the tools were going to cost money. So I got a job after school and Saturdays to pay for them. You know, some guys spend thousands of dollars on a good hot rod, plus thousands of hours of work. They won't even drive them in traffic. Some careless driver might smash into them and ruin a car that costs more than a Cadillac. While I was getting the money together, I read every book on mechanics I could get. I got a few ideas, too, about carburetors mostly. I decided to rebuild my car for the reliability run instead of the drag race. This would give me a better chance to try my carburetor ideas. And you know something? My ideas paid off, too. It took me a few months, but I finally won a 3rd place for reliability. But I got a real surprise when they started giving out the trophies. How? Well, the city merchants had awarded a trip to the Memorial Day race at Indianapolis to the boy. The club voted most deserving. And guess who the Knights elected? Me, Bill Bowers, the ex-ticket champ. How about that? Then Mr. Phillips, you know, the Detroit engineer, came over and wanted to look at my carburetor. He asked if I'd be interested in a scholarship for their factory school to study mechanical engineering. They've given a lot of scholarships to fellas in hot rod clubs, and a lot of them became top mechanics and designers. Of course, I said yes. So I got the biggest kick of my life, seeing the 500-mile race. They'd arranged for Ralph De Palma to show me around, too. He introduced me to racing stars like Manny Ayula Jenkins. And Mr. De Palma and Harry Hart talked over old times. We looked over all the cars, too. Bob Estes and driver Don Freeland were wheeling their special out for a warm-up run. This is the toughest race of all, for cars and drivers. A speed trial and reliability run all at once. What a kick, meeting famous guys like Duke Neyland and Roger Ward. And they told me they all considered Ralph De Palma the greatest driver in Indianapolis history. And Wilbur Shaw, the president of the Indianapolis Speedway, agreed with him. He won the race 3 times himself. You think the races are fast? You should watch the pit crews work. Why, they can change a tire faster than a blowout can go flat. A driver just couldn't win the race without a good pit crew to work his car over during the pit stops. Then, on the morning of Memorial Day, the big race started. I think there were about 200,000 people watching. The biggest crowd for any sports event in the country. And get this, out of the 33 cars, 9 of them were driven by ex-hot rodders, members of clubs like the Niners. The winner drove the 500 miles in less than 4 hours. That means an average of better than 125. Yeah, like I said, it was the biggest kick I ever had. Hard to realize I was actually sitting there, watching the biggest race in the world. Yeah, it's tough to believe now that that jerk in the slop-up was me, just a few months back, before I became a knight. You see, the reckless kid in an old clunker like that one is not a hot rodder at all. He's a square and a shot rod. Real hot rodders in organized clubs and timing associations all over the country have taken what used to be a hazard and turned it into a real hobby. And a genuine benefit to their communities. Not just through safe driving and driver education either. They've raised thousands of dollars for charity, conducted blood drives for the earth, as well as testing and proving that have produced better, safer cars for everybody. So that's the real story of the cool hot rod. The one that has become a brand new, safe, progressive American hobby.
The home economics class I teach is ending today, and there's an air of excitement among the girls as they look forward to our next day's class. 3 of my students, Janet, Mary, and Pat, seem especially interested in the subject of our next class discussion, making the most of your face. Watching them, I can guess why they are interested. Janet has mentioned to me her concern about her light eyebrows and thin lips. Pat wishes she could do something about her very round face. And Mary's skin needs care, but she isn't doing much about it. Tomorrow they will learn that making the most of your face begins with certain basic health habits. Let's see what health practices these girls follow at home. After Pat washes her face thoroughly before going to bed, she gives her face a further cleansing and lubricating with cold cream, because Pat knows her skin is very dry. She wipes away the excess cream carefully with cleansing tissues. Mary has a more common problem. Her skin is very oily, but she doesn't seem much interested in making the most of her face, although she'd really like to. Mary's not going to sleep yet, and won't for quite a while. She usually doesn't get enough sleep. Her oily, broken-out face shows her diet is probably bad. Mary eats too much chocolate candy and other rich foods. She just doesn't seem very interested in anything. She hasn't even washed her face or set her hair, although she knows she should. Mary isn't going to show her best face this way. She could take a lesson in skin care from her friend Janet. Janet's skin is very oily, too, but she washes her face often and thoroughly. Removing excess oils helps prevent blackheads and pimples. Soap and water is all most girls need for this. Janet has an occasional pimple. Pimples are often caused by improper diet and faulty elimination. When one does show up, never squeeze or pick it, or you may leave a scar or spread infection. Janet is interested in how she looks and has brushed and set her hair for tomorrow. She knows that 8 to 10 hours of sleep help her feel rested and full of life. In the morning, Janet's hearty breakfast after a good night's sleep helps to keep her radiant all day. Mary usually gets too little sleep and eats a poor breakfast. Her face doesn't express that inner beauty which comes partly from good diet and rest. No, it's easy to see that Mary isn't helping herself much. Beauty comes from inside a healthy body. Pat and Janet are full of life and interested in things about them. They are eager to go to school to talk about what they consider their problems of making the most of their faces. Perhaps Mary will benefit most from what will happen in class. In class, we are talking about making the most of your face. The girls are eager to discuss their problems. Now we are ready for questions. Pat wants to know if she can do anything about her round face. I asked her to come to the front of the room. Actually, the way Pat wears her hair emphasizes the roundness of her face. I am brushing her hair back to suggest a more oval face shape, which is considered more pleasing in appearance. Now the roundness of her face is less noticeable. Lucy has a different problem. If you wear glasses, bangs may hide too much of the face. With her hair brushed back from her forehead, Lucy's face has a more pleasant balance. If your face seems long and thin, like Linda's, long straight hair will make it seem more so. But hair worn full and with bangs can help give width to Linda's face. No matter what the current fad in hairstyles may be, select a style that is best for you individually. One that will do the most for your face. Janet is asking about her eye and lip problem. Most teenagers do not need eye makeup because their lashes and brows are dark enough. Janet's eyebrows are neat and well-shaped, without stray hairs above or below the brow line or above the bridge of her nose that she might want to pluck. But Janet feels her brows are so light in color that her eyes seem small. A touch of oil or Vaseline on the brows would not darken them enough. There are two kinds of eye makeup Janet might want to use. One is mascara in cream or cake form, and the other is eyebrow pencil. Janet should first brush her brows into place with a dry brush. Then apply only a little darkening to a shade that harmonizes with her hair, following the natural lines of the eyebrows. Brushing helps smooth out the color. Most girls do not need their lashes darkened. Remember that eye makeup is not supposed to show. If it shows, it is poorly done. Janet's eye makeup is applied so that you would not know she is wearing it, unless you remember how she looked without it. Now Janet's eyes appear larger and more prominent. Janet's other concern is her lips. She feels that her lips are too thin. Lipstick may help to give the effect Janet wants. Lipstick is the only cosmetic that is supposed to show. But like other cosmetics, it should harmonize with your own skin coloring and not be out of harmony with the color of the clothes you are wearing. Though there are hundreds of shades of lipstick on the market, there are only 3 basic reds: blue red, yellow red, and true red. Choose colors that harmonize well with your clothing. For example, I asked Laura to put on blue-red lipstick. Blue-red lipstick goes well with both her pink skin tones and her rose sweater. Once you've picked a good lipstick color for yourself, apply the lipstick carefully. Your lips should be parted and relaxed. Beginning with the upper lip, outline the lips carefully, following the natural shape. Where fullness must be added, draw this line only slightly beyond the natural line. Then, fill in this outline, stretching the lips. Blot your lips to remove the excess if necessary. Though lipstick is the only cosmetic that is supposed to show, it should never look thick, greasy, or obvious. If Janet should want to use a touch of powder at times to take the shine from her face, the powder should also always harmonize with her skin tones. Makeup, correctly worn, will never call attention to itself. It will be a subtle, natural part of you. And so our class is learning that you can make the most of your face by using hairstyles that go well with your face shape, and by using makeup sparingly but effectively. But far more important are good health habits, both mental and physical, which can help us all develop and radiate an inner beauty. I can see that Mary is becoming interested. What I am about to say next really applies to her. Poor skin care, poor diet, and too little rest often result in very oily, broken-out skin. With proper diet, rest, and good skin care, most of you can be sure you are making the most of your face. For some of you, a change in hairstyle may be helpful. For others, a careful use of makeup may be desired. Learn and apply a few skills to improve your appearance. Then stop thinking about your looks. Following the proper health habits can lead to a radiant vitality and interest in the world about you. A healthy mind and body produce an inner beauty which can help you all make the most of your face.
This is a story about what to do on a date. It begins one early summer afternoon. It begins with Jeff and Kay and Nick. Of course, you may not have a problem about what to do on a date, but Nick, well, he has a real dating problem. If he took Kay out on a date, what would they do? Where would they go?
Just a minute, Jeff. I'll get my tennis racket.
Okay, Nick, but hurry. Hey, what about asking Kay to come to the community center with us on Friday to fix up that scavenger sale? We could make it a double date.
What?
You heard what I said.
That's no place to take a girl on a date, helping to fix up the scavenger sale. Is it?
Why not?
On a first date?
First date?
Yeah. Well, Kay's a swell girl. I was thinking of calling her. Maybe ask her to the show Friday. Good picture, wagon train.
Well, hurry up and call her and let's get going. I still have to get my things yet.
Call her now?
Sure. You know the number, don't you?
Okay. What if she says no?
Hello?
Oh, hello, Kay. This is Nick Baxter.
Oh, hello, Nick. How are you?
Fine, thanks. Say, Kay, next Friday, would you like to see Wagon Train at the movies?
Oh, I'm sorry, Nick. I suppose you've got your mind made up to see it?
You've seen it? She's already seen it.
Well, ask her about the scavenger sale. Go ahead.
Kay, you wouldn't want to help get the scavenger sale ready at the community center, would you?
Oh, I've been hearing about that. Yes, I'd like to very much.
You would? All right. I'll call for you then. About 7? Bye. I sure didn't think she'd go to a place like that for a date. Where's my racket? Oh, ready?
You know, you better think some more, fellow, about what to do on a date.
Do you think she'll have a good time? What do you suppose I'll have to do? You know who all's gonna...
Now, you may not have thought of this sort of thing as a place to take a date, but it looks like it could be fun. A group doing things together. Pretty good idea for a first date. Plenty to do, plenty of people to talk to. But let's see if Nick and Kay are enjoying it.
No amount of fuss could make this thing look any older.
Boy, that is an old-timer.
Hey, Nick, can you help me put this sign up?
Oh, sure.
I can't quite reach that far.
How's this?
That's about right.
Thanks. Say, Kay, are you really having a good time?
Of course I am. I'm glad you thought of coming here.
So am I. I mean, yes, it was a good idea.
Okay. How about helping with refreshments for the gang?
All right. See you later.
Oh, yeah, oh, sure. Got any more tacks?
I think they're over there by the door.
Yes, it was a good idea to come here. How does Jeff get ideas like that? Hey, what's this? Maybe this is where Jeff gets ideas. A list of coming activities. A bike trip. That could be a lot of fun. A chance to do things with a group, to get acquainted. It does look like a good time, if your partner likes it. Would Kay enjoy a bike trip? Or a weenie roast? Another group date. A chance to learn the give and take of working and playing together. Not much arranging needed, not much expense, and that can be important. Could be a fine date, if Kay would like it. Wonder if she'd like to go to a baseball game. A date that's not too involved, one you can carry through comfortably. And there are all sorts of other sports events, inexpensive dates, most of them. Swimming meets, for example. You can find many good ideas for dates. Dates that give you a good chance to get acquainted. And dates that you don't have to worry too much about in advance. It was a good deal coming here tonight, double dating with Jeff and Phyllis. When all four are good friends and enjoy the same things, double dates can be lots of fun. Or you can ask Kay to go on dates with you alone, if you plan for what she enjoys.
Hey, you loafer. What are you doing over there?
You're right there.
Fine thing. As soon as Kay isn't around to supervise, you go off on a vacation.
You know, Maestro, I don't think your date ideas are so original.
What?
About what to do on a date, I mean. But what I'd like to know is, how can you figure out what a girl would like to do? A certain girl, I mean.
Well, you might ask her.
Yeah, Nick's looking for you. Is he good company? He always seems so quiet.
We get along all right. He's got a good sense of humor, and we haven't run out of things to say yet.
He's kind of cute. You gonna date him again?
I don't know. Besides, he hasn't asked me. George, get out of there.
I'm hungry.
If you want to do something, take the Cokes out there.
Okay, come on, here you go.
All set?
I think so. Come and get it, everybody.
Come on, we eat. Let's go.
Eat at your own risk.
Hurry up.
Hi, stranger.
I decided to come out of hiding.
Say, this looks good. You make the sandwiches?
Lattery will get you no place. Boy, this one is for one. Where should we go? Drive.
How about over here?
Oh, fine.
Your table, madame.
Thank you, sir. This is fun, isn't it?
Yeah. You sure you like to do things like this?
Sure.
I thought all girls wanted fellas to take them to fancy places, spend lots of money.
Not this girl.
You know, I sort of like things like this, too. You won't laugh. I like to go on bicycle trips, too. Do you?
And miniature golf. Do you love that?
Yeah, and weenie roasts and square dancing.
And baseball games and taffy pull. I think they're swell.
Say, you like to do lots of things, don't you? Say, Kay, next Friday there's going to be a weenie roast, or there'll be a bowling party if you'd rather do that, or we could go to the band concert.
Oh, I'd enjoy going to the weenie roast very much. Unless you'd rather go bowling.
No, I'd rather go to the weenie roast. If Jeff goes with Phyllis, we could double date with them.
Hey, Nick, hey, come on, we're gonna break open the ice cream.
Okay, be right there. Is it all right then, about Friday?
Yes, Nick. It's a date.
Yes, there are lots of things to do on dates. If you know how to look for them, if you plan them with the other person in mind, and if you really try to make sure each date's a good time. If you do these things, you'll know what to do on your date.
Here he comes. Where are we heading? Tell you when we pick up Jamie.
are they waiting for?
Give him a bump.
Hit him again.
Oh, cut it out. We're getting a jam.
What's the matter, you chicken or something? Come on, move it!
What do you punks think you're doing anyway?
What was that you called us?
I just bought that car. Now look.
Don't you have any homework, Jamie?
I told you no. Going out as soon as the guys come by to get me.
What time? It's already after 8. I don't know why you can't stay home for one evening. Your father'll be home in a little bit. Should be home now. Just where is it you're going, Jamie?
If I knew, I'd tell you. I don't know.
What do you have, boys? I'll write your orders with my new pencil.
Hey, those are great. My dad's got one just like it. Where'd you get it?
We just swarmed all over a guy. Fell out of his pocket.
What? When did this happen?
Just before we picked you up.
We bumped some guy in a big Buick and he gets out and starts getting smart.
Yes, starts calling us names.
Boy, did we give it to him. We sure messed him up. You should have been there, Jamie.
Who was he?
I don't know, some big bald-headed guy.
What kind of a card you say it was?
Oh, it was, what's the matter with you?
I asked you what kind of a car it was. I want to know.
It was a yellow Buick. Why? What do you want to know for, Jamie?
What's his trouble?
I don't know, but this isn't the place to find out. We'll see him in the morning at school when we give this to him.
Jamie,
How's Dad?
how did you know?
I heard it over the radio. How is he?
He'll be all right. He's resting now. He was terribly shaken up and bruised, though. Oh, it makes me sick to think about it.
Jamie.
I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry.
There's nothing for you to be sorry about, son. It wasn't your fault. I'm all right now. You'd better get upstairs to bed.
I'm sorry, Dad.
Better take this back, Jamie.
We didn't know it was your dad, Jamie.
We wouldn't have done it if we'd known.
Leave me alone.
Take it, Jamie.
You keep it. I don't want anything more to do with it.
Now, look, Jamie, don't get smart. Don't forget, you could have been along instead of one of us. Could have been one of our dads. Wouldn't see me moping around if it had been my old man.
Don't worry. I'm not forgetting a thing. Just count me out from now on.
There he is.
Jamie, we want to talk to you.
He's busy.
Have you seen the paper this morning, Jamie?
Have you read about the special session of the city council they're having this morning?
And all the things they're talking about doing. A curfew, upping the age of driver's licenses, canceling the football games, the parties, the dances, and everything else.
And it isn't fair, Jamie. Most of the high school students haven't had anything to do with the things that have been happening. Like last night, and the statue that was broken, and the theater seats, and all that. But we're all going to suffer for it.
I didn't have anything to do with it either.
And don't look at us.
We didn't kick over any statues.
You've got to help us, Jamie.
Well, what do you expect me to do?
We're going over to the city council meeting right now and see if they won't listen to our side before they do anything about it. Mr. McPherson said we could go. He excused us from school.
And he said you could go with us.
Look, all of you, leave me out of everything you're planning. All I want to do is mind my own business.
But this is your business, Jamie.
You heard him. He's not going anywhere. He's no sap. We're going to the city council.
Go ahead and laugh. Right now, you guys are more afraid than we are, but you're not fooling us. You think you can laugh at anybody who stands up to you, and pretty soon everyone else is laughing at him, and you think you've won. Well, I don't care if you laugh or not. It won't be funny if the city council does what they're talking about.
I wouldn't advise any of you to go to that meeting if I were you. I'm warning you.
Are you going with us, Jamie?
No, he's not.
I'm talking to Jamie.
What do you want me to do?
They'll listen to you, Jamie, because it was your dad that...
I'll go with you.
You're not going anywhere.
Talking about pranks and letting off steam. We're talking about criminal acts of violence. I say if these kids want to go around beating up people and wrecking things to prove how tough they are, then it's time we prove to them just how tough we are.
Mayor Honeywell, could we say something? I'm sorry.
What's all this? Do you have some facts to give us that we don't already have?
I don't know whether you'd call them facts or not, but, well, everybody keeps talking about teenagers as if we were a bunch of freaks or something.
We're just wasting time. We wasted too much time already. We've invited Mr. McPherson here. He's principal of the high school, and he can tell us anything these kids can tell us.
No, I'm sorry, I can't. That's why when these students came to me today, I asked them if they'd be willing to come down here and put their case before you. And I think you should hear what they have to say. This is Bill Stillwell, the head of the student council, and Chuck Leewood, captain of our football team. And Sally Lawrence here, the senior class president,
And Jamie's dad was the one who got hurt last night.
Mr. Mayor, I think Mr. McPherson's right. And I think these students are right, too. Teenagers aren't all delinquents. Only a few are involved in these criminal acts that we're all concerned about. If these teenagers, who represent all of the rest, have the courage to come here, then I think we should not only listen to them, but I think we should invite them to help us stamp out this vandalism. I say let's let them talk.
All right.
We don't want to punish all teenagers for the trouble a few are causing, but something has to be done. You know how serious the juvenile delinquency problem has become. We have to take some action to prevent this sort of thing from happening again. Now, if you have some suggestions to offer, we're willing to listen to you. What can we do? And what can you do to prevent juvenile delinquency? You tell us.
What would you do if you were Jamie? What can we do about juvenile delinquency? What would you say?
Oh, my best glove!
Frank, I told you you couldn't do it. Well, what's the matter? It's not the end of the world. I'll buy you some more glasses, Miss Harvey. Frank, you getting clumsy or something? You tripped me.
Oh, I'm just sick about this glass and never will be able to replace it. I'm sorry, Mother.
I don't know why you used your good crystal when you knew those young roughnecks were coming.
Oh, I wouldn't call them all roughnecks.
Well, a bunch of smart alecks then.
Daddy, most of the kids acted all right, and Jim and Frank didn't mean to break the glass.
Well, maybe not. But it makes you wonder about kids nowadays. In my day, when you were invited to a party, everybody was supposed to act like ladies and gentlemen.
You can see how things were going. At first, it was just acting silly, when most of us really wanted to review for that quiz. And then the teachers began to think of us as that class, because of the nuisances that some of the kids were making of themselves. And after the party, well, some of the parents began to wonder, too. But what happened later really cooked our goose. It seems Jim had practically run out of new ideas for ways of calling attention to himself in school. And so, one night, with the help of some of his friends, he hatched up this plan that was really daring, even for him. People were pretty surprised, all right, when they came to school the next day. Jim and his helpers had created a sensation. The big sign was about all you could see, and it was evident that someone was going to have a difficult and dangerous time getting it down. Some joke. Maybe some of the members of the junior class got a kick out of it, but some of the other classes didn't think it was funny at all. They thought it was an eyesore on the whole school. Our principal, I guess you know, was fit to be tied. But even worse was the way most of us in the class felt. That big sign, like a badge of dishonor for all the town to see. Yes, the word really got around about the junior class. And that's what made us mad. The word that got around wasn't a true picture of the junior class as a class at all. It left out the good things we did, the fine play we put on, the important things we learned, and all the studying we did. No, our reputation belonged to Jim Brewster and the little gang around him, who still thought he was pretty funny. After school that afternoon, the principal called the officers of the junior class into a meeting. Several of our teachers were there.
I'm afraid this class has put itself in a bad light. The stunt that was pulled last night has made it very embarrassing for the whole school, and for me personally. I've had several telephone calls from people who want to know what kind of a school we're running here. And frankly, I'd like to know myself. What we want to know is what's behind all this.
There's nothing behind it, Mr. Scott. It's just a bunch of smart alecks showing off. There's nothing malicious about it.
Do you know who the ringleader is? Do you, Kay?
Yes, we know.
It doesn't take news like that very long to get around.
You can understand my problem, can't you? As far as the people outside of the school are concerned, I am responsible for what goes on here. When some members of the class do something to disgrace the class and the school, it's up to the other members of the class to do something about it.
Well, what can we do?
Have any of you ever complained to these people who show off? Or do you really encourage them by thinking they're cute? Have you ever tried anything like ignoring them?
Why do you suppose these people show off? Don't they have enough to do?
You asked me what you could do. I think you class officers should get together and discuss this problem among yourselves and come up with your own suggestions. Then we'll meet here Wednesday afternoon and work this problem out together. Thank you all for coming.
Well, that's where we stand now. In a few minutes, our junior class officers are going to meet with the faculty committee. If you were in our shoes, what would you do about the show-offs? What do you think?
Dawn aren't leaving, are you? It isn't late.
Well, I think we better, Mrs. Turner, but we had a wonderful time. Thank you so much.
That's the trouble with going steady with a girl like Betty, Miss Turner. Mother always expects her home by 11.
Well, you come back again.
Uh-huh, we will.
Good night.
Good night.
Kind of quiet tonight.
Uh-huh. Don.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've never felt about anyone for the way I feel about you.
Gosh, Betty, I think you're wonderful, too.
Hey, you better watch out. We're getting on the wrong side of the road.
I better pull off the road for a few minutes.
Oh, I have to be home by 11, remember? Uh-huh.
Okay. Are you sure you have to be home right away?
Oh, I guess not. Not for a while, anyway.
Betty.
Let's go home, Dad.
Okay.
Hey, Don boy, what's the matter? Looks like you got deep thoughts.
I was just thinking about something, Nicky, that's all. Just thinking.
Still dreaming about the little queen over in the city. Did Betty find you a changed man?
Hey, you come off that right now. Listen, Betty's not... Say, Nicky.
Yeah?
You know those girls in the city the other night?
Yeah.
You think they might have had something?
You bet they did. Oh, you mean... No, just forget about it, buddy. They're just a couple of good kids who want to have a little fun.
Well, I don't know, Nicky. Something happened.
What do you mean something happened?
Well, I've got some sort of sword down there.
Well, don't worry about it. It's probably just a pimple or something. The same thing happened to me, and it cleared up all by itself.
Well, maybe, but I think I ought to go see our doctor just to be sure.
Well, suit yourself. Personally, I'd just forget all about it.
Well, there they are. Take a look at this.
Is it something bad, Dr. Carlson? You know what it is?
Well, there's no doubt about what it is, Don. Those little corkscrew things are the germs of syphilis.
Syphilis? Gosh, Doctor,
Now, take it easy. It isn't the end of the world for you. We can cure syphilis, especially if we find it in the early stages, such as yours.
Are you sure it's syphilis, Doctor?
The dark field examination is proof enough. We'll also run a blood test on you before you leave.
I don't know. I don't know how I got it. I haven't done anything.
Don, let's be straightforward about this. I'm not here to make a moral judgment, but you and I know that it was contracted through sexual intercourse with an infected person.
Well, I heard you could get something like this from a toilet seat or something.
About as much chance as being hit by a meteor.
What am I going to tell my dad?
The best thing is to tell him the truth. I'll talk to him if you want me to. Don, there's some things you should know about this disease of yours. Now, here we are. This is the sore you have, Don. It's called a chancre. It is usually painless. Sometimes it looks like this, and sometimes like this. When one of these appears on or around your sexual organs, you've probably got what we call primary syphilis.
Boy, that's pretty awful looking.
Well, now, actually, the appearance of a chancre is rather fortunate. Sometimes this sore does not appear, or is so small that you wouldn't notice it. And when that happens, the disease might go unnoticed for years.
Well, what happens if you don't find it right away?
Well, the results can be tragic in many instances. Syphilis can cripple you, blind you, destroy your brain. Of course, it may kill you eventually.
Well, you did say it could be cured, though, especially in an early case like mine.
Yes, in the stage you have, we can knock out the spirochete in a hurry.
Spirochete? What's that?
Well, that's the corkscrew-shaped thing that you saw in the microscope. Like this. These germs enter the body when you have sexual intercourse. They burrow into the skin, usually causing a chancre to appear where they entered.
They work their way into the bloodstream, and the chancre on the skin disappears. Now, that happens to quite a few people who think they're all right after the sore clears up. Now, Don, I'll have to have the names of the girls you've had sexual relations with. And naturally, this is confidential.
Well, there haven't exactly been dozens. As a matter of fact, I know exactly where I got it. There is this one girl over in the city, Barbara Myers.
Well, now tell me everything you can about this girl, Don. You see, the health department over there will want to contact her to see that she's examined and treated before she gives the disease to someone else.
I'm afraid I don't know her address. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure that's her real name.
Anybody else, Don?
Well, no, sir. Just that one girl.
Are you being honest with me, Don?
I told you, there was this one girl over in the city. And that's it.
Now, look here, son. I've admired your courage for coming in here and facing up to the facts. But you get it through your head that you're dealing with a deadly disease, not some common cold or a case of the chicken pox. If you think you're doing some girl a favor by protecting her good name and reputation, you're wrong. You're terribly wrong.
I've said all there is to say. There is no other girl.
All right. If there's no other girl, we'll leave it at that. But before we do, I want to show you something. Now, come here. I've showed you the symptoms of syphilis as they appear in the male. Generally, the chancre appears on or around the external sex organs. Men and boys who contract syphilis have a good chance of spotting it when the danger signal appears. With a girl, however, it's not quite as easy. You see, a girl could develop a chancre way up inside, like this, and never know that she had syphilis. Of course, if she's lucky, it'll appear out in the open, like this. Now, we don't have to worry about this, do we, Don? You say there's no other girl who might have become infected by you.
Even if a girl had it and didn't know it, she'd find out, wouldn't she? I mean, there'd be other signs.
Yes. Yes, sometimes there are other signs. In the secondary stage, a few weeks or months after the primary chancre disappears, she may develop a sore throat. Patches of her hair may come out. Or her skin may break out in a rash like this. Then again, the symptoms of secondary syphilis may be so slight that they go unnoticed. If she doesn't go to a doctor, or if a doctor isn't looking for syphilis, it may never be detected. You see, the secondary symptoms, like the primary chancre, also will disappear even without treatment.
Well, you'd find it for sure when you had a blood test before you got married. They'd discover it there.
Now, that would be a lovely wedding present for a girl, to discover that she had syphilis a few days before the wedding. And in some states, people can get married even without a blood test. But suppose she had undetected syphilis, inactive in the latent stages. She might go for years thinking that she's all right. Then, before she knows what's happening to her, she goes insane or becomes a hopeless cripple. Here's something else, Don. Congenital syphilis. Look at this baby. Its mother infected it before it was born because she had syphilis and didn't get treated. Now, you say there is no other girl, Don. But if you're lying to protect a girl, just consider what it might cost her.
But she might not even have it.
You can't take that risk. Only a doctor can tell you for sure.
She's a nice girl, Doctor. I don't want her to have to go through all this if she doesn't have to.
All right, Don. It's your decision. But if you're the young man I think you are, you'll bring that girl in to see me.
I have to think about it, Doctor. I've got to have time to think about it.
She might not even have it. Only a doctor can tell. You can't take that risk. I may have given Betty syphilis. She'll
she'll never know until it's too late. She goes insane or becomes a hopeless cripple. Now, there's something I want to tell both of you. Now, what's happened is past. You both have the disease, and you will both have to be treated. Now, you took a risk by doing something that society condemns. Perhaps you didn't realize some of the penalties involved.
Betty, I didn't...
Betty, I know that you blame Don, but you should thank him for one thing.
Which thing, Doctor? Shall I thank him for giving it to me? For adding me to his list of girls? Just what do I thank him for?
For gosh sakes, Betty, I didn't mean to do this to you. I didn't...
What is it, Doctor? What do I thank Don for?
Just be thankful he brought you in the first place. And be thankful he brought you before it was too late. Now, we've caught this thing in time. We can take care of it. You and Don are both going to be all right.
You may be right, Doctor. But right now, I'd rather be dead.
I know. But you're thinking only of this moment. Tomorrow, you'd rather be cured.